What is going on, YouTube? This is The Last Musketeer, and welcome to part 7 of the Arknights free-to-play progression series. So there's a lot of things that I need to go over, and with this being the first video that I put out after reaching 1,000 subs, so I want to start this out with a massive thank you to everyone who has supported me. Being officially partnered with YouTube is something that I've wanted, that I've only dreamed of for the last few years, and there was a lot of times where I wanted to start a YouTube channel, but my anxiety was a bit too much to the point where I held off for so long. But I'm finally glad that I did it, and the journey, it's only been about 3 months so far, but it's been an amazing 3 months, and I absolutely love doing this, and I'm so happy I get to interact with all of you all the time, whether it's in the comment section of the videos or in the Discord, and I will leave the link in the description for the server if you want to go ahead and join that. But I can't thank you guys enough, because this has been something that I've always wanted to do, and it's such an amazing feeling. But with all that aside, I am trying to get a new editing software and trying to change some things around because there are a lot of things that I'm trying to work on that I've been experimenting with. One of them being story vids, and I know I talk about it all the time and they're not out yet, but the reason being there is just so much that I want to include in it, and I want to make sure that I do as good of a job as I possibly can so that the videos are as entertaining and as deep as they can actually be. So bear with me on that. I am working hard to get these out, and not just for Arknights, I'm going to do it for other content as well, especially ones that I enjoy on the channel. I'm also going to be starting a new game here this week, so there's a lot of things in the works, and hopefully I can continue to do as good of a job as I possibly can to keep everybody entertained and keep everything going. So if you do like my vids, consider hitting the subscribe button. It is free and it helps to support the channel and lets me know that you're enjoying my content. But getting into the actual stages now, so what I'm going to show you is this one and the next one are both part of the Dorothy event, the last two that I didn't show from last time. Now it looks like I'm about to be overrun pretty bad, but the thing is, I borrowed somebody's Posey for this one because Posey seemed to be the best option for me. I tried a few different options for casters that would be really good, maybe trying to Surtur it, which is always an option, but my team would fall apart while there was downtime in between swapping Surtur from one position to another. So I ended up falling back on Posey, because Posey is one of those ones that can, regardless of the situation, generally always do enough damage to deal with it. Now I did use Surtur for this one, and you're going to see me trying to do the timing as smoothly as possible, because I had to get her out, deploy her 3 different times in the amount of time that the boss was going through, and trying to stop the mechs from coming up. So it was a bit of a challenge for a little bit, and as you can see, the ones on the left side are going to activate, at least the first one. I'm sure the second one does later on when the boss goes down its first phase, but I take out the bottom lane with Surtur, and then I'm going to drop Surtur up top right in front of the stairs to deal with not only the 2 in front, but also deal with the Dorothy creations that are coming up from the stairs. And I needed to do that, otherwise those ones being activated up top is ruining the run. So from this point, I'm trying to stall a little bit with the Gundam. Cantabile is going to go down, which is perfectly fine. I drop Click on the left side, facing towards the right, to help deal with the Gundam a little bit and do a little extra damage in the meantime. Now I have Bagpipe blocking for some damage, especially because when the boss moves, it does do the global attack that does less damage the more operators you had out. So basically I decided on that situation. I am then going to drop Surtur as soon as the boss moves into the lane that she's at currently, and take out the first phase. Now it's going to do a lot of damage to the second phase, but she is going to go down right before it finishes. But with Thorns there, I have no problem taking out. So the boss is gone. Now I have Amiya trying to do a little bit of damage to the actual Gundam as it's coming up there. She gets it a decent amount down, but not all the way. I have Swire at the very back blocking, and especially trying to tank some of the shots if they get in range, though that is probably not going to happen looking at it here. I end up taking her out and just swapping Surtur back in so I could use her for the Gundams, make sure Mudrock doesn't go down, because as long as she survives, I have nothing to worry about after that, because the rocket Gundams really aren't that hard to deal with. As long as you've got one or two decent healers, you can keep everything alive. So this one is steadily going down. I drop Click and Cantabile there, and I also drop Myrtle just to soak up some extra damage if need be, and that one is done. So that was the final stage of the EX stages. I did some of the challenge ones as well, but I didn't leave them in because I didn't feel like they'd be that enjoyable to watch unless they were the latter part of the stages. But I didn't quite get all the way through it, I will admit. But in good news, we are actually taking Dorothy to E1 here because I really like what her kit brings. Having the defense down from the first ability of hers, and then the second one having the bind is really nice. The bind is actually so good for stalling, and while it doesn't show me getting to 7 right there, I do go and farm some of the rocks and do that later on, but I don't think I recorded that, so do know that she is sitting at skill level 7 right now. But one that I am very excited to bring you, that I've been talking about for the longest time, probably about the last 7 or 8 videos of my progression series, is actually E2ing Jay. So now I have a certified banger in Jay who is going to do a lot of work for me in the future, and I would also like to unlock his module as soon as possible, because getting it from draining 3 DP every 3 seconds to only draining 2 means that I can keep him a little more self-sufficient, and I'm going to be able to actually gain DP in that time instead of losing the same amount that I was gaining. So this is a big upgrade that I'm going to get in the future. Obviously, he's only 37 trust, which is a problem, but I will throw him probably in the control center later on and just get him going, just so I can get him enough to actually do that module later on. But I beat M86 here, and for some reason didn't record it, but I noticed after, so I was able to turn it on and show that I actually completed the stage. But we're getting into some of the regular story missions that I needed to complete where I left off on the last one. Now this one was actually kind of fun and kind of tricky for a moment, because these guys up top are very tanky. They take nothing as far as physical damage unless you have someone that can counter that situation. So basically, I have my bottom lane, I have Thorns attacking straight up, which is a bit strange, I do know, but it was a viable option, because especially if they are moving through later on, he's going to be able to do a lot of damage to them and help me get rid of that mainly. So I dropped Mudrock on the first box up there because I want to try to get that out as soon as possible. I have Shining over there to give Amiya a little bit of heal so that she doesn't go down, and then I spread the damage out with Bagpipe by dropping her directly onto a block. So each one of them is being attacked by one, except for the one that just walked through the door. So because of that, I'm able to do enough damage to take both of them out, and then Amiya is going to survive for just a moment and just enough health left to actually take out the last one. She went down. I probably would have had to start over again and try to figure out a strat for that. But as you can see, I have Dorothy planted, and I'm trying to use her defense down to allow Mudrock to do a little more damage at first, but I didn't necessarily need that one. The bind is a lot more useful, I think, for most situations. The defense down is nice if you have constant attack on them, but since it only lasts a limited duration, they have to keep walking through that certain path to be able to keep the defense down up, which is a bit of a downside, but if you are doing kind of like a chain launch there where you have everything attacking from one direction, it is a very, very good option. But the bind itself is incredibly useful, and I've used it quite often since this point, and also in IS2 I think she is really good for stalling people like Phantom, for instance, stalling the dancers on the right side. If you don't have viable options in most of your runs, that is going to help you tremendously, and it's something that I've found to be actually really enjoyable, just planting a whole lot of traps. So maybe I do enjoy traps a lot more than I thought I would, and I mainly got Dorothy because I thought, you know, this could be a operator that I actually spend a lot of time working on and spend a lot of weird strategies trying to go over. So that was my whole plan going into that one. But this next stage is actually a little more straightforward. We have some roadblocks. If I needed to, I could have stalled in a little bit of different directions, but what I'm going to do is basically have them going out from 2 different lanes. So Mudrock is going to handle one lane, and with a little help of Thorns, of course, and Thorns is going to handle the top side, and Click is going to do a little extra damage when needed. So that one went pretty smoothly. I do like having roadblocks that I can deploy at any time, because that's one of my favorite strats, honestly. Having extra ways of not just dropping my lines with ops, but also being able to funnel them into certain directions is always something that I very, very much enjoy. Now this stage, I think it took me a couple of runs to figure out, because of the way that I was doing it. Tallulah actually does some damage, so that one I wasn't in worry of leaking so much, because I knew she was going to do enough damage to take it out, because I had nothing left. But I put Thorns in front of this plate. He's going to be doing the main source of damage. Gavial is going to be here as well, because with her S2 she reaches up to an extra range, not just from forward, but also to the right and the left of her actual facing. So she's going to be able to pull in and do a lot of damage. It's basically a mini stun every time she swings with an S2, which makes it to where it just cuts off a lot of the damage. They're going to have a very hard time breaking through the line with her skill active. But once again, Thorns is the star of the show, as he is a lot of the time, because he just does so much work. The operator is so insanely good, but I use Dorothy on this stage as well, because I'm trying to implement her into my play as much as I possibly can, and of course along with Swire, because Swire is my favorite, so you're going to see her quite often. I try to include her into every run that I possibly can. If there's a situation where she is no use whatsoever, then I probably swap her out, but still I usually just use her regardless of the situation. But as you can see here, I drop Amiya on the left tile because I want her to be doing a lot of damage. I'm trying to get her skill active as soon as I possibly can, because these elite versions of these enemies are a pain. So if it wasn't for the true damage there, Tallulah probably would have went down, but luckily I did enough damage with Amiya and Thorns to take out the one before it gets another shot in, and the other one follows suit quickly after, so that one is down. So I am finally on the boss, Mephisto, and I ran this a few times I should say, in Discord while I was streaming, so I haven't actually worked on it since that day, because I'm trying to do as much of the vent during that time as well. I wanted to get some clears for the video and just get a little bit of progress there, because nobody wants to see a progression video where it's just a vent auto farming every day. That's just not enjoyable. So we will get to that at some point, but in good news, I have unlocked the skin for Phantom, which I believe was level 95 in the IS2 reward shop. So we're getting decently far into it. I think at this point, by the end of where I started this video, I was probably around 103 to 105, so I'm actually getting pretty far into the rewards. I still have a decent amount of LMD to go, which I have been using quite often to level up a lot of my different ops, Thalopsis being one of them, because Thalopsis is absolutely amazing. One that I am very excited to actually take up to E2 at some point, but once again, I have a lot to work on, so she is going to have to stay back. But I did take her to rank 7 on her skills, just to make sure that I can max out that emergency heal she has, because it is insane. So good for actually keeping people alive. I didn't realize just how good it actually was until I got to test it in the boss stage of Chapter 8. So either way, we're going into some of the challenge stages, because the main thing is we've got Tex Altar coming up in just a little bit, probably maybe a month's time at this point, which is scary to think about, because realistically I have maybe 30 something pulls at the moment, and I'm going to need a lot if I want to at least try to get something decent off of that, because there's no telling how many off banners I'm going to pull. I'm very good at pulling off banners, obviously. It is basically my superpower at this point, so if you are looking for an off banner, specifically a guard by chance, let me know. You know, I can always do a pull for you in the future, because I will be doing some pulls on stream when the Texas event actually comes out, and I'm very excited to do that. We have a decent amount of people lined up, ready to go, as long as they're patient enough to let me pull for them, and to wait a little bit, because I know how the jitters can be. I know how it can feel to want to do it as soon as possible. But I will be streaming it, so we will be able to get as many people as we possibly can. Whoever wants me to pull for them on that day will be fantastic. I don't know the exact day of when it is going to come out. Hopefully it is on a day that I'm off. If I can plan ahead a little bit, then I can change my date and then get to that point anyway. So we'll see what we can do, and I'll try to come up with something, because I know time zones are going to be a bit of a problem, but it may be a really long stream. Who knows? Maybe it'll be a split stream, something like that. But we'll figure something out. But going into this one, this is actually really fun for me to watch, because it had been quite some time before I'd had to deal with Mephisto, and I figured, you know what, since it is a challenge mode stage, I'm going to go ahead and pull in a support unit, because it was going to be a little rough by myself. I probably could have got it done eventually, but this saves me a little bit of time and guarantees me an OP a little bit quicker, because the last thing I want to do is fail a challenge mode or use up all of my practice slots early trying to figure out a strat, because as I've said before, I'm trying to get as much pulls as I possibly can, and the only way I'm going to be able to guarantee getting as much as I can is just using something that I know I can guarantee get through the challenge mode stage with. Now, with the regular stages, I try to do all of them without supports, because I think that is the best option. I gotta use what my roster gives me, what it allows me to do, so I'm going to continue to do that as long as I possibly can. But Silver Ash was a great option for this, because I know with his attack range, placing him in the position that I have him, he's going to be able to, once active, not only hit Faust from the top, but also hit everything that's coming from the bottom. He's just a massive, massive attack range that made it, basically a walk in the park. So Faust is pretty easy at this point. I mistimed the activation of Bagpipe because he was still invincible at that moment, so she basically wasted her skill at the beginning for nothing. Also have Tequila sitting here if I needed him. Did not. Between Silver Ash and Bagpipe, he went down pretty quickly, so... But it's always good to be able to test out some supports in challenge stages, so you can see just what they're capable of. And also, is there any operators that I haven't used in these videos that people would like me to try out? Maybe specific niche ones that is potentially your favorite character that you would like me to try, because I have, even though my friends list is full, I do have a lot of options for people that were willing to swap out for me. So if you could give me some suggestions of some that I might like, maybe their playstyle is unique, anything like that, I would very much enjoy being able to test that out. And maybe if I like them enough, be able to do some videos on it, displaying some type of niche or something like that would be really, really cool. But moving on to 6-1 challenge mode. This one, I don't exactly remember what the challenge mode for this one was either. I probably should have left them in for the editing, but I ended up recording after starting instead, so I don't actually know what they are. But once again, this one was pretty easy. I have Thorns facing up. I have Mudrock blocking that lane as well. So between Thorns and Mudrock, it is a lot of damage up there. I also throw Amiya in so that when the heavy shield guards can come up, she's going to be able to make quick work of them. And basically, if I need her in other situations, I would rather use the S2, obviously, but the S3 is very good for short stages or short burst when I need it. So that is actually where I stopped doing some of the challenge modes, because I was running low on sanity and I had some other things to spend. But going into this one, this is actually my first viewing of the Molinar event, and yes, I did do a 10 pull because, you know what, I really wanted it. I really was hoping I would get lucky enough to pull them. You know, it wasn't quite in the cards, so I got a 5-star, and unfortunately that was also not the one I wanted, so I got Franca, which is a new op for me. Well, it's always good to get new ops, but she's just not one of the ones that I'm probably going to use very often. Maybe later on in a off-meta kind of style, I might try her out. Who knows, but it will be a long time down the road if that is the situation. But we are going into the actual event stages, and now I'm not going to show you the first 6 actual stages. I'm going to show you 7 and 8, because I'm going to show you the challenge mode versions of the other ones and talk about them a little bit, and talk about some of the decision making that I have. There was one in particular that I didn't throw into this video, that was one of these special stages where you have the fixed setup, and the way I did it was probably the slowest way you could possibly actually do the stage, and so I might make a separate video on it of what not to do in most situations, but it was pretty funny in general. So we'll see what comes of it, what I can come out with on that. But this stage was actually kind of cool. The pillar part of it, I basically kind of avoided the pillars, though they are a good option for a lot of this. Being able to cut off different pathways could make it a lot easier, and especially if you need to switch the enemy rotation later on, you can do that. For the challenge mode, I'm going to work out a strat for doing that, and hopefully find something that's going to work decently well when it comes to that situation, because I haven't beat the challenge mode of it yet. I ran a couple of runs on it, but then I ended up running out of sanity. Just decided I'll wait till the next time to do that. So you won't see that in this video, but I am going to show you the original completion with Gabrielle on the bottom right side. She takes out both the flamethrower guys and the fireball guy in one skill 2 activation, which is fantastic. Not only that, she also cuts off every bit of their skill while it is active, because it is basically a mini stun, which is why Gabrielle Alter is so fantastic. Now here, obviously she's going to go down. She didn't have enough SP to get to that skill at the time, but she did do her job at the first part, and I'm going to let Mudrock handle the second part, even though she's not the best when there's that much damage coming out, especially with as fast as the flamethrowers do attack. It cuts out her shield instantly. She's just taking a lot of damage. But Swire and Bagpipe handle the other part of the bottom lane. Swire, of course, is going to get as much action as she possibly can, because everyone knows that Swire gaming is top tier gaming. But moving on to the next stage. And this is the last one in the regular rotation before you go into challenge mode, basically if you're going to the clears after. And this one being the last one is kind of annoying because the extra stats on the enemies can be a bit of a pain, especially because of the fact that there are the guys that will wake up the other enemies that are inactive currently, and they will do a lot of damage when they're woke. But you may be thinking, of course, it's an obvious choice that Thorns would be on the attack speed tile, but that's actually where you're wrong, because I wanted to see just how well Swire could handle that lane, and this gives me a glimpse of what Swire can look like in the future when I actually play some Swire Knights, or perhaps some Instructor Knights in the future, depending on what I'm able to get as far as operators. I may do a little bit of both of them. Obviously, if I have good options where Swire can handle it solo, just with a full buffing team, that's what I'm going to try to do. But I go ahead and throw Gabrielle Alter in the other lane, so she can help if there's getting a bit too many enemies to deal with just Swire alone, and also because she does a lot of damage in general, so getting rid of those casters is the option. Now, on my initial playthrough, I was a bit confused as to why they woke up, because I knew I didn't attack the one at the bottom, but now watching back, I actually saw that one of them walked up from the top right into Swire's lane, so she hit him, woke everything up. It wasn't a problem. I just had to drop a couple of units to make sure that none of them walked through the gates there, and I'm going to put Thorns in Myrtle's spot to get the full range of motion here, though putting him behind Mudrock probably would have been the better option here, because he's going to have a bit of a hard time actually building up his skill rotations at this point. So you know, in hindsight, it would have been a lot better, but either way, they get the job done. I will remember this for the challenge mode, because I know there is just a little bit of extra enemies on it. That's all there is different, so most of it is pretty easy. As long as I don't wake something up a little too early, I should be perfectly fine there. But moving on from here to the challenge mode stages, we are starting in AW1, and this one is interesting because it actually added, with the challenge mode, the true damage cannon that goes off what has the most block currently. So I do let it go off almost a couple of times, because I was actually at the end testing to see just how fast Mudrock could deal with some of the enemies that she was blocking at the time. So it nearly went to two full rotations. You can do this obviously a lot faster. I did it kind of slow, just for the sole purpose of testing a couple things, seeing the damage. I like to have little challenges thrown in the middle of them, watching what my actual operators are capable of. So obviously, as I've said many a time, do not use these progression vids as guides. I mean, if I do get it done and somebody else has the same kind of lineup I do, then obviously it could be a viable option, but if I'm not making it as a guide in particular, probably best that you don't do what I do, because a lot of these are very, very dumb decision making. But getting down to the last few enemies, I have Gabrielle taking out the ones on the left, I have Saria blocking the ones on the right, and I'm actually going to get rid of her and put down Mudrock. Now, I was obviously could have ended it a little faster if I'd used some of my other operators that I have here, but I wanted to see if Mudrock could actually take it all the way before she got nuked the last time. And she gets it done just in the nick of time. Beautiful work from Mudrock. Alright, moving on to AW2. I actually really like this strat that I had here, because what the challenge mode did was add more enemies. Basically, you have 2 more golems rotating around, so you have to be a little more careful with how you place things. But the great thing about having a Liberator Guard is you can drop them there and they are not going to be attacked by the golems. So Tequila can sit on that without having to worry about anything. I can have him there the whole time, get that one charged, and then I can use him to do extra damage there. Now, I drop Gravel on the bottom part in like right after their first rotation. That way she could go and get as much charge as she could before they actually did damage to her, because they do a ton of damage, so they're going to get rid of her instantly. Now I drop Cantabile after he passes to charge the next one. Now I have nothing else to worry about in the stage other than making sure nothing leaks, so I drop Swire and Bagpipe bottom just to help a little bit damage there. Tequila is doing his damage in between the rotations. I make sure to stop it in case he's going to get hit before the skill ends. That way I can get a little faster charge going and make sure that he stays up, because the extra damage from him is going to make it clear just a little bit quicker. Now for AW3, the only thing that was different is that Candle Knight Viviana had extra attack. So basically anybody that she's going to nuke with that is going to basically go down unless they have some way of negating damage, which I luckily do. So what I ended up doing was completing it like I normally would, with having Thorns doing most of the work on the side in front of the gate and then throwing some extra damage here or there. But since none of them walked out of the gate into Mudrock's block, I knew that Viviana would run straight into Mudrock and be the only one damaging her, which means when she's going for the nuke, I'm going to have a shield available, making Mudrock basically invincible to Viviana this whole time. So it was a great option. Obviously, there are other ways around it. You could do damage from a distance, you could bait the attacks, whatever it is. There are a lot of viable options, but I did this one purely for the case of just trying to show off what Mudrock can potentially do in situations like this. So she is very good when it comes to negating damage like that. Tequila obviously goes down. I was just going to try to get him out in time to do some extra damage, but he didn't quite get the second charge up, so I probably should have just popped his first skill when it became active the first time, because the extra damage would have got rid of the stage a little bit quicker. But either way, it was a pretty simple one. I think this one was one of my favorites because it was so easy. So for AW4, the challenge mode was all the enemies have increased max HP, which is not too bad to deal with. Obviously, if you have enough blockers, if you have enough damage, it's not a problem, though they can be a bit annoying with the extra time that they hang around, because if they're focusing on trying to take control of the pillars, then they're going to have extra damage overall, which is a bit of a problem, and so that's something that you have to deal with, especially with the ones that drop in on the right side. They drop in 2 or 3 different times, so you want to make sure you have plenty of options for that. But as you can see, they do end up taking down the tower from me at that point, and the stun was actually almost horribly timed, to the point where one of them almost got past Bagpipe, but we ended up getting that one done. There was no problem there. I have Gavial bottom lane to deal with the heavier guys as it goes on, and really, this one was pretty straightforward. As long as you can take care of the pillars and hold them as long as possible, you're perfectly fine. You're not going to have any problems to deal with in this one itself. And not to mention that the fact that it gives you extra SP as you're going through, so if you're activating abilities, quite often you're going to get back to them pretty quickly. It makes it a lot easier for Thorns as well when he's dropped in this location, because he can actually get his skills up constantly. Now, I did activate Gavial's ability for these guys, and it did absolutely no damage. These guys are insanely tanky. I was not expecting that whatsoever, but I throw down Amia because I always have her there just in case something goes wrong, and she ends up taking care of them herself. But moving on to this one, the actual challenge modifier was that all of your units have 1 less block, which means Cantabile, being at 1 block, cannot block anyone at all. Bagpipe, once again, is another one that cannot block any at all. So what I do is I have Thorns here on the bottom right side, and then I have Swire down and to the left of him, facing up, so that whenever I have the blockers in front, she's going to get her full damage utility from her trait, and then also Mudrock in the middle, because she's going to do a lot of damage here, and she's going to give me a couple extra block. Now, the good thing about Bagpipe, having her on skill 3 means I can actually block something with her, at least while the skill is active. Now, as you can see here, both of them get by because she did not have it momentarily, but that's not really a problem, because later on, I'll have her activated again and try to do something, though the boss does come out here pretty soon, and that is a problem because he hits like a truck, actually gets rid of both of my healers, so that was a bit scary at first, but I do have Saria as a drop for an extra heal if I need it, though Saria is taking a lot of damage and also could not hang for that there. But I activate Gavial's ability when they're coming forward. Mudrock is going to try to tank as much as she possibly can. Myrtle and Cantabile just for an extra drop to take out some of the damage so that we can survive a bit longer, and that's all I really needed to get that one done. Now, AW6 is actually the scary one because its stipulation for the challenge mission was that it required one less experimental creation to actually activate the Gundams, meaning the little ones could walk into them at any time and it's a guarantee that they activated right then. So the problem with that is if I let any by, a Gundam gets up and I basically lose, unless I had somebody like Aya that could take them all out pretty quickly, but I didn't have to worry about that in this case. Now, I did run this like 3 or 4 times, mainly because I kept misclicking. I'm trying to click on Myrtle for some DP timing, just to gain that, and then drop somebody with it, and then I would accidentally click on the Gundam bot next to her, and it would stop my whole momentum. So I had to just be a little more careful, slow it down at times that I needed to, make sure I paused when I needed to. I just don't like trying to do all the micromanaging when I'm doing these if I don't have to, just because it takes a little bit more time. But I have Mudrock soloing the bottom right lane, and she does take quite a bit of damage, so it is kind of scary in these situations. There are multiple attacking. She's going to take quite a bit of damage and not be able to heal through it at some points. Not to mention that some of them are going to get a little too close by the time she has enough time to actually get rid of them, so I have to put down an extra blocker. I drop Cantabile for the moment, just to get to where there was only 3 of them, and then Mudrock can handle that once again, and if I need to, I can swap in somebody else, which I do Swire here, but Swire was not needed because Mudrock handled it on her own. Now, some of the drones did get pretty close, and I had to drop a Mia to guarantee that I would take it down in time, but with that, we get that one done, and that was the one I was actually scared of for the most part. So we're going into a little look at my base, and the reason being is because I get my control center to version 5, finally, after a long bit of grinding, because I had left it alone for a bit too long here, but as you can see, I'm going to have to work on a lot of trust. There's a lot of operators that I do not have like any trust on, and especially when it comes to the fact that I need to put modules on some of these, I'm going to have to switch things around. Swire is looking at a healthy 171% trust, and so once I get her to 200%, I will swap her out of that position, but I needed to do this because I needed to clear a lot of the stuff for all this extra LMD and recruitment permits, and especially the XP that I get from doing these missions. So this was a big increase for me. So with that out of the way, I'm going to start to show you some of the operators that I'm working with, the fact that I got conviction, and I want to try to use her in situations with IS-2. I want to see what she's capable of with like a bunch of attack speed, being able to proc her skill more often. Maybe I can hit that 5% and just do some nasty nuke on somebody like Phantom or something, but I'm taking my first sniper to E2. So this has been a long time coming, and Blue Poison's been a favorite of mine for a long time. The only thing I'm missing is a little bit of LMD and some of the dual chips. Now, I do have options for both of these. I have plenty of energy during when I'm showing this, so I decide to go ahead and run just one stage of the LMD farming just so I could get the 10k to guarantee that I have enough for that, and then I also go and get my dual chips to get this one worked out. But Blue Poison has been one that has just been on my account from basically the beginning, and I have so many things that I want to try her out for and see just how strong she can get, especially when I get her skill masteries up. I also do want to say that I love her E2 art. It is so good. I mean, I'm using the skin, obviously, but this E2 art is so pretty. I just love the color tones on it, everything about it. And Blue Poison is just such a unique sniper in my opinion anyway, because of the fact that she does the arts tick damage. It just makes her an all-around really cool character that fits perfectly into what amphibian that she is based on. One thing that I love about how Arknights does their character development is the fact that a lot of games, or animes in particular, do a lot of stuff with dog people or cat people, but they don't do a lot with like frogs, toads, salamanders, things like that. It's really cool to see them go a little bit out of the box when it comes to this situation. And also, now that I have her E2'd, I'm kind of curious which one I should actually use. Maybe it's a little more beneficial when I actually get some mastery points into the second skill, but I know the first skill is always viable. But the thing about it is, I think that since I got her way back, I've really only used skill 1, because most situations it seems to be the more viable skill, though if she has a lot more damage now that she's E2, could be an option for doing the dual target every attack. Maybe a little bit better for me in IS2 as well, especially if I can get the mastery points into the second skill, because I know the first one is going to hit hard regardless, and it does split to 2 targets when it's active, but in a lot of situations if I need to attack a lot of things, then I should do that. Now this is actually the first time that I ran the paradox simulation. I only had to do it one time because lucky enough hers isn't that hard to do. It's just making sure that you put the right timings on your second skill, and I do believe it has to be second skill because I think that's the only way you can do it, because these actual like peacock based figures are the ones that are going to take the attraction of whatever you have dealing damage. So basically they're going to get hit the whole time. You activate the second skill to guarantee that she's going to do enough damage and proc to get rid of the peacock and actually hit the other targets, because if you're using the skill 1, I believe they will get past, because she's only going to hit multiple whenever the skill comes up. Now you have to do it once again once it gets to this point, otherwise the mirror gets by or some of the rolling pins will get by. So it's just all about timing on this one. It is pretty simple, pretty straightforward. If you have a little bit higher mastery rank on it, you probably get it done a little bit easier, a little bit faster than I did. But I will take a free 200 Arundum. I need all that I can get, and unfortunately I only took her to level 10 because after leveling her up I had no LMD left. Just got her a few points to her stats with that level 10, but I am now at 10 as far as my E2s, so 10 units at E2 within like 3 months. I probably could have done a lot better if I was focusing on a lot of 4s, a lot of 5s, compared to some of the 6 stars. Obviously, I wish I had put Gavial the Invincible up a lot sooner, because the 3 block would have been absolutely massive. I could have used her in a lot of situations where I use a lot of defenders, especially early on, because I got her so soon off my account. But also I need to E2 her as soon as possible so I can get the extra rewards, because those do go away as far as I know once the Texas Altar comes out and we're able to use both units, both versions at the same time. Mostoma, my second ever 6-star, is still sitting in a sad situation because I haven't messed with her in so long, and it feels bad, but you know, the thing about it is she just takes so much investment. I have to get her modules up to make her extremely viable, because I need that slow. I need her to be able to hold lanes for me extremely hard, and so once I get her to that point, I will use her as much as I possibly can to make up for all the times that I didn't. I know she's not the most meta unit because of how she works, but she is extremely useful. And on initial thought, I couldn't decide whether I wanted Blue Poison up to E2 or Firewatch, but I know that Blue Poison deserves it a lot more than Firewatch, because I got Firewatch much later, and also Firewatch can do some decent stuff right now. I just don't utilize her all that often, but later on I will try to take her to E2. Dorothy I would like to E2, but a 6-star is obviously super expensive, so that's going to wait a decent amount of time. But I think that is going to do it for me, guys. I hope you enjoyed, and once again, a big thank you to everyone for the support, and I hope to see you in the next one. Peace.